Well guys, as usual, this video has been pre-approved by Little Moose and Charlie. They are both astronomy lovers and hope you enjoy this video. So today I want to finish my review. This will be part 2 of the TEC Telescopes Engineering Company 5 Eyepiece Turret. And this is their latest design they came out with last year, 2022. But first I'd like to go over something. I had a question for Yuri, and I was able to get an answer on it. And the first thing we're going to look at is, it looked like it was aluminized. It looked like the diagonal was aluminized. Wasn't quite sure, and so I just wanted to make sure, just for my own information, I guess. I like to know things, which one it was. And so here you see the email, and here's the info about turret mirrors coating. And it says we are offering 2 types of coating, and you'll see that they have the silver coating and the enhanced coatings. Then Yuri goes further to say, we have chosen the second option as more durable. Please note, a relatively thin and compact diagonal mirror would be deformed by multi-layer dielectric coatings. Now that's very good information. Regards, Yuri. Now see, I wasn't aware of that. I certainly did not know that. I'm not an optician, and as such, I like that kind of information. So now we know why Yuri chose aluminized, the type of aluminization, and the exact reason. So I like stuff like that. That's very good information. So I thought I would pass that on to anybody else that may want to know that. And then he goes on, thanks for your detailed report on YouTube. Well, thank you so much, Yuri. I appreciate that coming from you. And that was part 1. And then he's got some extra pics, test reports, and sketches are attached, which he had some pictures attached to the email. And here, some may wonder why there was that small foam cutout in the, there was, I believe, 4 in the case foam. He said the foam cut are for compact planetary eyepieces like Zeiss, Brandon, Vixen, the TAC, LE, etc. So now we know that reason. And I don't have those smaller eyepieces because I have to have long eye reliefs. I wear glasses. I rarely like to take them off at night in the dark. So I have to have eyepieces that have a generous eye relief. Now the next thing I'd like to address is I did call and speak to Yuri just briefly, as I caught him when he was having to do some other things. And so that is about the fact that the backside, the 2-inch that goes into the focuser, is not threaded for 2-inch eyepieces, where the last one, the last version that he had years ago, was. So I just asked him if he ever came up with a version that did include threads for your 2-inch eyepieces, would it be something that would be user replaceable? And we didn't go in depth. He just said yes. Now as you can see here, and this is pure speculation, Yuri didn't say this, I didn't see it anywhere, but you can clearly see those horizontal holes in that ring. I'm going to assume that if you took a spanner wrench, you could take that off, unscrew that, which would allow this 2-inch, I will call it maybe an adapter at that point, to come off, then put the new one on, take your spanner wrench and tighten it back down. And again, that's pure speculation. I could be 100% wrong, but just looking at this, this is what I'm thinking. And I can't really tell in there whether there's screws. I'm assuming it's like a spanner type thing, but then there might be screws, because it looks like you see that little bit of around the hole where it might have had something. It's hard to tell, where there might be some kind of a oh, what do they call that, like that Loctite type thing that they put on a screw so that it doesn't back out and change the retention. So again, this is pure speculation, but I just wanted to mention that he said that could be an option should he decide to do that. The other point Yuri brought out was that people weren't using it, apparently, that feature. That the reason I would want it is if you're looking at the moon, let's just say, you wanted a neutral density filter. Well, if you've, say you've only got 2 eyepieces in there, and you're flipping back and forth, or you got all 5, but the point is, it'd be really expensive to have 5 1.25" high quality eyepieces, or filters, in each eyepiece, versus just 1 in the 2" end. So, and then you might have some filters in there for planetary viewing. And so it'd be nice to have 1 filter, and then as you rotate the eyepiece, you have the same filter. So again, just a cost savings would to the observer is that you don't need multiple 1.25" filters that are the exact same color. Next, guys, you're saying, what the hell is this thing that I've got on here? That did not come stock, obviously. That is something I did, and I'll tell you why I did that. That is, this replaces the lockdown thumb screw that they had, the knurled thumb screw, that lock that rotating collar, so that way when this is in the eyepiece focuser, you could rotate this independent of having to loosen up the focuser to rotate the whole thing as your position in the sky moved to the eyepiece to make it viewable to the viewer in a optimum angle. So I'll tell you why I did that. And this is more dependent upon the telescope design, not the turret design. So if we take a look, this is the original knurled thumb screw that came with the turret. And as you can see, it's a 1032. Now the issue is when the original thumb screw was on the unit, and then that placed, now this is my 92 millimeter, and also does it with my 130 GTX, and I'm going to assume it looks like it will do it with my 175. When this is put in here, the thumb screw is down like this, and it will hit this area here. And it did make just a small little, what you call it here, just the slightest little ding here. But so what you have to do, now there's 2 ways of doing this, obviously. You go like to make master car and get one that's longer. Well, I already thought of something prior to that, and then you go there, you want 1 or 2 of them, you're going to pay what I feel is just an exorbitant price on shipping, just not worth my time when I can come up with something that I feel is just as good here. So now when we put this in, let me tighten this down. Well, we don't have to tighten that one yet. We'll just leave that like that. So now when we tighten that down, this clears this collar here and this adapter. And here you can clearly see that. And again, this same thing works very well with my 130 GTX. And so, depending on your telescope, this may or may not be an issue. It all depends on the design of the backside of your focuser here. For those of you that may be interested in doing this, it's very simple. The next thing I'm going to do is show you how I made this. This is 1.5 inches long by 1032 button head hex bolt. This is a 1032 coupling nut by 3/4 inches long, and these components are both stainless steel. The next thing you're going to want is a 1032 die, and so I got a bunch of these things around, so it wasn't a big deal. I didn't even have to buy this. The only things I had to buy were the coupling nut and the bolt. But These shouldn't be too expensive. Now here's a close-up of the end of that threaded 1032 bolt. You'll notice it's not flat. It's got kind of a nasty little ridge. Well, when it acts as a bolt, it's not a big deal. But when you're using it with the turret, you want it pretty flat. So what you're going to do is take this, what I did is put this on the side of my grinding wheel. It just gently went into it, very, at perpendicular to the side of the grinding wheel. Just gently go in and flatten that side down. You're just taking off a little bit. You're not going to go in there and have at it. But before you do that, you need to take your die and on the proper side, you have to start from the proper side that's chamfered more, that has less threads for lead in, and you'll screw this on. You'll put this on to chase the threads, and when you put it on, you're going to want to go back a ways, just like this. And it may cut a couple little bit of threads. Mine, when I did that and put it on, it actually started to get a little bit of material. So maybe the root of the diameter of the bolt was, the tolerances were maybe just a little bit bigger than the die here. And so when you do this, make sure you're doing it in an area that's in the garage or somewhere so if you do get some very tiny chips, they don't get anywhere near your telescope equipment, and when you're done, blow it off. So now once you've done that on the grinding wheel, you're going to go to a wire wheel, and then you'll go around and just hit the end with the wire wheel to take off any burrs. Then you'll take the die and you'll back it off. When you get out to here, you're going to want to go back and forth a couple times. And so now when you take it off, it should be fine. I had no issues after that. If you have to run it on the wire wheel, you could. But at that point, you should have a nice, decently flat surface with none of these ridges, as you can see on the one that I did. And the last step you'll do then is put your coupling nut on. And when I got to within about a 1/4 inch, 3/8 of an inch from the top, I took a little red Loctite. Didn't know if I had to do this. I just did it. You don't have to if you don't want. I put just a dab of red Loctite on the threads up here. Then I turned the coupling nut back up to the top, the head of that bolt, and then take an Allen wrench and an Allen wrench here, and then a wrench here. Crank it down, get it nice and snug, and that gives you this completed unit. And what I like about this is that coupling nut acts much the same as that knurling did. Gives you a nice grip up here. So once you get this in position on your telescope, you can tighten this down by hand, and it's got a little more surface area here, but it locks it down precisely. You don't have to worry about it. And even when it's up in here like this, behind this collet, you still can get in there to tighten that down. So that's what I'm doing, and it's worked great. And again, I wanted something where I didn't need tools. So this, I believe, takes an 1/8 inch Allen wrench, but I didn't want to use anything, and I certainly don't need that kind of force. So I wanted something that you could use just by hand, as you would in the original configuration. Here we can see it in use on the 92mm, and when I put this on a scope, this is always to the top side of the telescope. And so you can see I can easily get in here to turn that, to loosen it up. Now we tighten it down, just like that. And as an added plus, this fits easily into the case without any modifications to the foam. And lastly, before we load this up with eyepieces, I thought I would show this on the business end of my Astrophysics 130 GTX. And as you can see, same thing here. Now in this case it barely misses, but it does miss, so it works fine. And I believe this is the exact same type of arrangement on my 175 f8 Astrophysics, so we should be good to go. And here we see the clearance with the 130 GTX. The next thing we're going to do is choose the eyepieces, which I'm going to use in this review. What we have here are Delos eyepieces. I have, I have many eyepieces. I've got every one of the Radians ever made. I've got every one of the Delights ever made, and also all of the Deloses that were ever made. And I also have some other ones, but my favorite in the 1¼ inch size are the Delos, with the 72-degree apparent field of view and the nice eye relief. I personally find that to be very comfortable when using my eyeglasses at night. And the sizes we're going to use from left to right is the 3.5mm, the 6mm, the 10mm, the 14mm, and the 17.3mm. Make no mistake about it, guys. That's a lot of eyepieces right there. So let's just see what this weighs. This is, I've got several different scales. This is just my small one. I don't feel like getting out the bigger one. It's quite a bit bigger, and I'm sure a little more accurate, but this should be pretty good. So let's get this in the center, or close enough. And I am showing 6 pounds, 10.6 ounces. Now this is a lot of weight hanging off of a focuser. So unless you've got yourself a very beefy and durable optical tube assembly and focuser, I would highly recommend you not use eyepieces this large. So I've got my telescope set up in the garage, and before we go out there, one of the things I want to look at is, since there are no threads on the end of the nose piece of the turret, I want to see if the telescope will focus, reach focus with the eyepieces that I've mentioned, using this adapter from Astrophysics, which has threads for the 48mm eyepieces. Now this is the Astrophysics 2-inch extension tube with the brass locking ring. It's 1.75 inches long, and it has, as stated, the 48mm threads. It is the Astrophysics number ADA202. Now, as stated on Astrophysics website, this extension has a net spacing of 1.8 inches or 45.7 millimeters, which means you would have to have that extra amount of travel, or it may or may not come to focus. Now I'm going to go off track just a little bit here for a second. You'll see where I'm going with this. And when you put the filter on, see how simple that's going on? All the way. It bottoms out on this adapter, as it should in any eyepiece. Okay? And when I take it off, it comes off nice and smooth. Absolutely no hitches. Why am I saying this? Well, there was when I posted my link to Cloudy Nights, there was talk about the Takahashi unit, which I did a review on that, which does not have threads for these filters. And I'm going to show you something that somebody said on there. You come to your own conclusions. So if we look at this guy here, okay, whoever that is, I guess his name is Mike. It says, I have the TAC 4 turret. I bought it from Land, Sea, and Sky on November 3rd, 2021. Mine has 2-inch threading. I just now screwed a 2-inch Baader filter onto the neck. Here are the receipts, so to speak. And he's got 2 pictures attached. Now if we zoom into the picture, it's not large enough to see how that's threaded in there. I can't tell whether it bottomed out or not. I do know the unit that I had did not thread on at all. It caught by 1 thread and that was it. And so it didn't work. Now the question becomes, I was thinking about showing that, but I thought, well, you know, why should I do that and possibly damage, you know, the threads on the filter? There really was no need for that. Now, boys and girls, here's what I want you to take a look at. Here's the same poster. I want you to see, he said this after the other one, several posts down. I just now tried several other 2-inch filters on the neck of the TEC turret. Now watch this, boys and girls. All screwed on good enough to stay secured. And I could screw them back off. So, again, let's analyze that. All screwed on good enough to stay secured. And I could screw them back off. So I'm just going to say the following. What if I was working in Yuri's shop or Roland's shop at Astrophysics, and they come up to me and I'm making some parts that have to, you know, screw together to another mating part, and they asked me, well, how is that fitting? And I actually said, all screwed on good enough to stay secured. And I could screw them back off. What do you think Yuri or Roland would say? That's all I want to say. I don't think any more needs to be said. And as you could see, when I screwed on that yellow filter onto the adapter, there's no way that I would say it screwed on good enough to stay secured. I would say it went on perfectly. So this guy here, I guess his name is Mike with that username. Why don't you do a video showing how you screwed that on and running it right up all the way to the front of that Takahashi turret. So we are now using the Astrophysics 130 GTX, and as you can see, I have that extension tube on it. And with the mentioned eyepieces earlier in the video, I had absolutely no problem reaching focus. Now, with or without the extension tube, all eyepieces reached focus. I had plenty of in-travel and out-travel to accommodate these eyepieces. But most importantly, wanted to see whether that extension tube, because I would now be able to use color filters on the front side. Now, as I stated earlier, when I was in the house doing part of this review, you'd better have a very stout, beefy focuser. Obviously, with the Astrophysics 130, no issues, because that's a lot of weight to be hanging off the end. Nice and smooth, positive contact when each eyepiece comes into view. And one of the things that really separates this from the other turrets is, again, you have the TEC logo. This is the viewing eyepiece. And should this telescope get into a section of the sky where it's awkward for the viewer, all you got to do is loosen that up, move this, and now the TEC logo is moving with the eyepiece, and you can now present that in any location to where the viewer can now comfortably look through the eyepiece. Excellent for public star party use. And I have to admit, one of the things I did not like about the Takahashi, and again, nothing personal, but without that feature of being able to rotate the whole thing without loosening up, well, over here, without loosening this up at night and physically rotating the whole unit inside the focuser, it's just something you don't want to have to do in the dark. Here, that eliminates it. Okay guys, so here's my 92mm Stowaway, and the same set of eyepieces. Now with that extension tube, with the 14mm and the 17.3, they just barely, in fact they really don't reach focus. Here you see it all the way in, and it could go in a little further. So all the other eyepieces easily focused with that extension tube, which would allow you to use your screw-in filters. And I would have to have a shorter extension tube by just a little bit to be able to get the 14 and the 17.3 to really come in, to really tweak it a bit. Other than that, without the extension tube, all the eyepieces easily came to focus with this turret. And something else, on this small telescope, just to the quality of the focuser and the telescope OTA in general, to support all this weight moving on the end of this is phenomenal. And it remains butter smooth. There's no hiccups, there's no stickiness. The travel, I mean, it's phenomenal. So sometimes, guys, you get what you pay for, but I just thought I'd show that if anybody's wondering. Absolutely flawless. So what I'm going to give a try here in this situation with the 92 is, because Astrophysics doesn't have one shorter. On the Gina Astro products, they're showing this blue Fireball 2-inch eyepiece extension tube with 35mm or 1.38 inches of extension. And that should work just fine. The price is right. Cheap enough to give it a try. And as stated in the specs, it says that the is threaded to accept standard 2-inch telescope filters, and so we'll give that a try. I'll go ahead and order one of these.